Hello, we'll dedicate this video to the reading of Merleau-Ponty essay on consciousness and the acquisition of language. The essay was originally written in 1964 and then it was published in the small book I suggested you to read for your research. In the introduction, Merleau-Ponty describes the method he's going to use as a phenomenological method. I'd say a Husserlian method in which he uses as a phenomenon the psychological given, in this case, the psychological development of the child, and he integrates this analysis with the literature, psychological and linguistic literature around the development of the language of the child. So the thing itself to which it comes back is actually the development, is the psychological analysis of the development of the child. So, as it concerns the first word, he shows how in the first weeks, first words are actually not spontaneous. The imitation is what comes spontaneously, but the effort to transform the multiplicity, the inconsistent multiplicity, I love that you into a one is an effort, is I'd say an event, an operational truth, although I don't think but you would agree on that at all. So the first word translate according to Grégoire an affective state. It's not a synthesis according to Grégoire, but a unity. So this is what but you would define a ism. So the complex multiplicity of all that is beyond the word, the first word is translated into a unity. According to Wundt, the development of language is always a premature development because, in fact, the words we choose to say first and the language we develop is not consistent to the organic body, but to the environment. So we are always a step behind what is demanded upon us to say. So the first word is always an effort that shows this premature development. According to Cassirer, instead, the first word is a synthesis of impressions and facts. Or Delacroix describes this first word as an explicitation between signified and signifier. So the first word is a way through which we make explicit the child makes explicit the connection that is between the sayable, the Stoics would say, and the thing itself. So the word is this lecton, to use a Stoic term again, that mediates between the body and the concept. Merleau-Ponty disagrees with Delacroix because the first word has certainly a slippery, indistinct meaning that brings together impressions, feelings, sensations, and he gives example of the way in which a blind person discovers the meaning of water and manage to bring to existence this meaning that is deeply interwoven with the sensation and not necessarily capable to recover that meaning at command. So language is, according to Merleau-Ponty, an organization of material that finds a kind of a zigzag path. So in this path, the subject is not there yet. So, for example, Merleau-Ponty describes the evolution of language in 5 years, and, for example, he cites Piaget and his description of speech as a mode of social communication, according to which the real communication is not yet possible for children, at least until they are 8 years old, because the communication is possible with someone older that has a sense of self already. For children whose sense of self is still under construction, there's no real communication. So, according to Jacobson, language is a specifying attitude that unify independent truths together and re-equilibrate them and put them in a system. The language is connected to 3 functions that are basically representative. So the language brings to representation something that is yet to be formed, and this representation has the function to appealing to others. The problem with that is again that the representative self, at least in children, is not there yet. There's a latent ego that is still melted together with otherness. So thoughts that should translate a form of a concrete language, which is not yet the language of words, but is the language of materiality. Again, that demands Badiou was talking about, or the pre-predicative matter Husserl was mentioning. So the concrete language is something completely different from words, from the expressive language, which requires the emergence of an I, of a distinction, of a position taking. And in that sense, Merleau-Ponty goes in depth in analyzing Scheler's and Husserl's position. In Husserl, he says there's the subject and the intersubjective path that run one parallel to each other. So on the one hand, the subject is this ego cogito, is this I that takes position, we would say static phenomenology, and describes meanings from the position he took, so from an intentional act in which the intentional object is what is meant by a subject, and from a genetic point of view, the subject is the intersubjective subject, that is transcendental in the sense that it constitutes the meaning. Now, transcendental is meant as that dimension that transcends the limits of my personal experience in a way that constitutes the condition for the possibility of other meanings to be constituted. So the subject is originally intersubjective, because the subject, as genetic phenomenology shows, is not there yet while we are constituting meanings. It comes with the meanings. So we might say that this concrete language that precedes the formal language is the language that stems from transcendental intersubjectivity. And Scheler somehow reinforces this position in saying that there's no distinction between self and other. There's the emotional evidence from which I say, yes, this is something that I perceived. But the ego cogito is more of a cultural achievement rather than a logical truth. So the logical truth that is expressed is a concreteness, it's something concrete, material, that not necessarily reach the level of a language of expression of words. Of course, if we study the development of children, we'll finally arrive to a form of consistency between Stoicism would say sound and words, but not necessarily we can will get there. Uh, the concreteness and the categorical could be two different layers of evolution of the expression of a sense of a meaning that we consider valid. And especially in psychology, in clinical psychology, we might find ourselves in front of situations like this. And in this book of Merleau Ponty describes hallucinatory cases or the cases of aphasia in which there's this alignment between the layers. So these are the readings, the authors that I asked you to dwell with during this semester. If you have questions, you can write to me, or we can discuss on the various topics that we covered on Canvas. Thanks. Bye.